Hi guys, welcome to Preschool Storytime. I'm so glad you're joining me today. This Storytime series will be focusing on art and springtime. I have some surprises lined up for you and some wonderful stories. Today's story is Katie and the Sunflower by James Mayhew. In this story, Katie finds herself in an art museum on a rainy day. She becomes enchanted by a famous masterpiece done by a famous artist named Vincent van Gogh. Maybe you've heard of him. Katie gets herself in a little bit of trouble when you'll see. Pay close attention to the wonderful illustrations of some quite famous masterpieces. Let's listen. Katie and the Sunflowers by James Mayhew. Grandma was helping Katie plant seeds in the garden when it started to rain. "Never mind," Grandma said. "The rain will make everything grow." "But what will we do instead?" said Katie. "Let's go to the museum," said Grandma. "You always have fun there." When they arrived, Grandma sat down to rest, so Katie went off by herself to look around. Katie liked a painting called Sunflowers by Vincent van Gogh. The sunflowers looked dry and crunchy and were full of seeds. "I would love to grow seeds like these in my garden," said Katie. She reached into the painting and discovered she could touch them. Can you see all the famous works of art? But Katie bumped the vase. It wobbled and fell right out of the picture, spilling sunflowers and seeds all over the floor. "Oh no," said Katie. "I'd better clean this up before anyone sees." Just then Katie heard giggling. She looked around, but there was no one else in the room. The laughter was coming from the Breton Girls Dancing by Paul Gauguin. "What's so funny?" said Katie, climbing inside. Can you imagine something falling out of a painting? Or being able to climb into one? Katie saw that she was standing inside or beside a farm. The three girls, Maisie, Musette, and Mimi, giggled and pointed at the mess Katie had made. "You'll be in big trouble if anybody finds out," they said. "Well, I didn't mean to knock over the vase," said Katie. "Will you help me clean it up?" She is right inside that famous artwork. "Too tired," said Maisie. "We've been dancing all day," said Musette. Katie turned to Mimi. "What about you?" "Only if I can bring Zazu," said Mimi, picking up her dog. "I suppose it's all right," said Katie. "Let's go." So they went through the frame and into the museum. Mimi and Katie grabbed up the sunflowers, but Zazu wanted to play. He snatched the flowers and ran off. "How can we put the picture back together now?" said Katie angrily. "I'm so sorry, mon ami," said Mimi. "Let's try to catch him." They chased Zazu, but he was too quick for them. Suddenly he took a flying leap toward Café Terrace at Night by Vincent van Gogh and disappeared inside. Katie and Mimi jumped in after him. There they go, into another famous painting. Zazu refused to let go of the sunflowers. He darted between tables and chairs, bumping into them and sending plates and cups flying. They are making a mess of that masterpiece, aren't they? Then he ran between the waiter's legs. "Such cried the waiter, dropping a plate of pastries. He was very angry. He chased Katie, Mimi, and Zazu right out of the frame and back into the museum. "What are we going to do?" gasped Mimi. "I've got an idea," said Katie, spotting a painting by Paul Cézanne called "Still Life with Apples and Oranges." "Come on, I need your help." There's the famous painting, "Still Life of Apples and Oranges." Katie reached into the painting and grabbed one end of the tablecloth. She told Mimi to take the other end. "Now pull," yelled Katie. The bowls of fruit tipped over and apples and oranges came tumbling into the museum, just as the waiter caught up with them. He slipped on the fruit and spun around till he was dizzy. "Zutzlor," he yelled. "I wonder where Zazu went," said Mimi. "He must be here somewhere," said Katie, as they dashed away. Look what they did to that masterpiece. Came right out of the frame. "Alas," said Mimi, "I'll never find him, and he'll be lost in the museum forever." "Wait," said Katie, "I hear a dog barking." They followed the noise, and there at the end of the corridor was Zazu. He had dropped the sunflowers and was barking at the bright red dog in Tahitian Pastorals by Paul Gauguin. The red dog barked back, and Zazu jumped inside the picture. "Your dog is nothing but trouble," Katie grumbled as they clambered in after him. There's some more very famous paintings there. Zazu and the red dog barked at each other, wagging their tails. "Welcome to our island," said two beautiful women. It was very peaceful. The breezes were full of the scents of flowers in bloom, and the sea gently lapped the beach. "Phew," said Katie. "It's very hot here. Let's go wading." While Zazu and the red dog scampered on the beach, Katie and Mimi splashed in the sea. Zazu was digging furiously when all of a sudden he disappeared. "Where has he gone?" said Mimi. Katie peered into the hole. It was very large, and at the bottom was Zazu, sitting on top of a big chest. Mimi and Katie moved him aside and slowly raised the lid. It was full of gold coins. "Pirate treasure," said Katie, showing the women. "What will you do with it?" Look what they found in the middle of a famous painting. "We have no use for money here. We have everything we could ever need," they said. "You can have it if you'd like." Katie took a handful of coins and thanked the women. Then she, Mimi, and Zazu went through the frame and back into the museum. Katie quickly picked up the sunflowers before Zazu could grab them again. "We better put these back," she said. "Which way is it?" "I'm not sure, mon ami," said Mimi. "I think we're lost." Then they saw Zazu sniffing at something on the ground. Sunflower seeds, said Katie. Zazu left a trail of them. What a clever dog. I'm glad he came after all. Mimi gathered Zazu up in her arms and they followed the trail of sunflower seeds back to the still life. They carefully replaced the fruit and then went on to the cafe picture by Van Gogh. The waiter was standing there with a piece of paper in his hand. It's a bill, said Mimi, for the pastries we ruined. Katie dug into her pockets and took out the gold coins. Is this enough? She asked the waiter. Merci, he said, looking very pleased. You may eat here whenever you want. And he climbed back into the picture. Katie and Mimi followed the seed trail back to the sunflower picture. Katie collected a few seeds from the floor, wrapped them in a tissue, and put them in her coat pocket. Then she carefully arranged the sunflowers in the vase and put them back in the picture. Almost as good as new, said Katie. Thanks for coming. I'm glad I did, mon ami, said Mimi. It was fun. And she hopped into her picture with Zazu. Grandma was just waking up when Katie returned. Shall we see if it stopped raining, Grandma said. It hadn't, but Katie didn't mind. Rain is good for the garden, she said, and it will make everything grow. The end. Can you imagine jumping in and out of some of the most famous paintings in the world? It does sound like fun. Katie did finally get all her messes cleaned up, thank goodness. If you enjoyed this story, check out Other Katie Adventures by James Mayhew. Now I want you all to try your hand at one of Van Gogh's famous paintings. We saw quite a few of his paintings in the story, and some by other artists as well. I have his famous sunflowers, as well as his famous Starry Night. Do you remember seeing them both in the story? Now, Van Gogh was famous for his use of strong shapes and thick colors, but I want you guys to do this using watercolors. Come down to the library, pick one of these masterpieces up, and make your own. I've started mine already. Now, if you've been in the library lately, you may have noticed our fine art museum. Unfortunately, it has no fine art in it, and that's where you come in. Once your painting is done, sign your name and bring it back to be displayed in our fine art gallery. A lot of what we'll be doing this season will be displayed in the gallery. So come get your picture to paint and some watercolor paints if you don't have some at home. And get started on your masterpieces. I can't wait to see them. Until next week, my friends. Take care.